Hello everyone, Voodoo here, and recently, about a week ago, I guess by the time this video comes out, Havoc got buffed in single target. Among those buffs, we got Chaos Strike, makes sense, Demon's Blades, makes sense, and Fel Blade. And people are probably wondering, why have they buffed Fel Blade so much? Because Fel Blade is one of those things where I think they've buffed it 5 or 6 times now. There's even a meme in the community about a spec rework loyalty card where every Fel Blade buff is a little trigger. I'll talk about it later, but the question kind of arose, like, why do they buff Fel Blade so much? Like, why do they do this? Well, they do this because they've kind of painted themselves into a corner with how Havoc is designed. So in today's video, we're going to talk about that, talk about why they buff Fel Blade so much, and just talk about some of the problems that Havoc's design has caused that have led to this moment. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Liking the video is such a big help for me. It helps spread the video to more people. If you like watching my content and want to watch me succeed, hit like before you watch the video. Any content creator, it really helps. So with that, let's get on to it. So for those who missed it, I did a whole video on it, but these here are the buffs that Havoc got. 2 of them are for Demon Hunter in general, but obviously it's mostly a Havoc channel. Then just, does get some love here and there. And 2 of them are for Havoc specifically. So we got Fel Blade, the Hunt initial damage, not the dot. Take note of that. And Chaos Strike and Demon's Blades. Chaos Strike also being Annihilation. All by 10%, all pretty good there. A lot of other classes got much more interesting buffs. AoE buffs to marksmanship, cooler single target buffs to Unholy, whatever Warlock got, I'm not really sure, but I don't know, words. But one of the things here is that Fel Blade got buffed. Now, Fel Blade, for those who don't know, roughly does 1.2% of our damage. Now, that's not a lot. So 10% buff to Fel Blade is a 0.12% increase. In fact, this buff accounts for roughly 4%, and most of that is actually in the Chaos Strike buff, because Chaos Strike and Annihilation roughly do 20 to 30% of our damage, with Burning Blades, which is roughly 80 to 90%. Chaos Strike anyways does another 15%. So Chaos Strike alone does roughly 40% of our damage here. So 10% buff to 40% of your damage, pretty good. The rest of the stuff here is just kind of fluff, and exists because they can't really buff Chaos Strike a ton. So one of the big things with Havoc is that there's just not a lot of tuning knobs for single target that don't affect AoE, which is kind of a big problem. So let's hop over into the game right now and just take a look at what I'm talking about. All right, so we're here in game, and let's just open up our talent book here and take a look. So the big thing and the big reason why Fel Blade always gets these buffs, oh, I gotta block my chat, whee, is that Havoc just doesn't have any knobs or tools that are used in AoE that aren't also single target, right? They always buff Fel Blade, Chaos Strike, Demon's Blades, because those are the only abilities that deal single target damage without any form of AoE. But on the flip side, our AoE also we use in single target. So Havoc has this weird mixture of things where we have these abilities that are just single target, right? We have Chaos Strike and stuff like that. That's it, right? Just single target, fine. But all of our AoE abilities we use, aside from literally Glaive Tempest and Fel Barrage, and I guess Rage Fire. But all those abilities, we also play in single target. We use them in single target in our main rotation. Most other specs have ways or have tools or have some kind of form of AoE that they don't use in single target. They don't use in like raids or single target, stuff like that, so that they're able to actually be buffed for one or the other. Havoc has that in the form of Chaos Strike, but a lot of other abilities that deal AoE damage we use in single target, they just kind of don't really do much AoE damage. So we're gonna take a look at Havoc's tree, and we're gonna take a look at a lot of other spec trees, and it's just kind of how Havoc is designed that it's a bit of a failure, right? So let's take a look at just like spec stuff, what actually does AoE damage. We have the Hunt, fine. It's a cooldown that deals damage. It's like 1.5 minutes. Without the tier set, I don't think this should really do that much damage. Like, it's fine. It's not like it's gonna be like 8% of your overall anymore, because we don't have the tier set that buffed it to the moon, right? Immolation Aura is realistically our main way of differentiating between single target and AoE damage. But the problem with Immolation Aura is that we use this to generate Fury, and we also use this for inertia. And we need to save our inertia for our Essence Break Demon windows, because that's where all of our damage is. So this kind of ties back to us having no damage out of our cooldowns, because we have to save the one thing that Havoc, that Blizzard had allowed us to deal AoE damage with for our I-beam windows, right? It's a generator, it's an enabler, but our enabler also does damage, which is fine. Enablers can do damage if they're on like shorter cooldowns. Like, think of Ret Paladin, right? A lot of Ret Paladin's AoE damage is going to be stuff like Wake of Ashes. It's going to be stuff like their hammers from their tree. I don't know if they play the other Dawnlight one anymore. I think it's the hammer stuff. It's going to be stuff like Divine Storm. But they also have things like Expurgation, Blade of Justice, Judgment I think can hit multiple targets now. So it's fine if those things can cleave if they're on like shorter cooldowns. Like let's say if Chaos Strike could cleave every time you Blade Dance, Chaos Strike could cleave for 3 times. Like that would be fine because it's on a shorter cooldown. But Immolation Aura is on like a 25, 30 second cooldown. Like right now I have pretty low haste, 27 seconds. If I meta, it's 23 seconds. And if I get my I-Beam haste, it is 21 seconds. So with all the haste in the world, minus Lust, of course, I could drums, but I'm not going to waste the drums for this. 20 seconds. And yeah, we get 2 charges, we get random refunds, but you're still always trying to save this for your burst. I guess meta resets it, but it leads to this weird thing where we have this AoE damage stuff that we're not trying to use because it's an enabler for other things. Same with something like Sigil of Flame, which is another way they could go to give us like AoE damage that doesn't affect a single target. It's an enabler, right? It gives us a mastery buff. We're trying to save that. So that's kind of why you see something like Fel Blade or Chaos Strike buff all the time. Because like they could buff Immolation Aura, they could buff Blade Dance, they could buff the Throw Glaive things, which I guess we're not using right now, which I'll touch on later. But something like Blade Dance does AoE damage. And they don't want to touch our AoE damage. The problem is that all of our skills deal cleave damage, right? We have nothing that doesn't. I-Beam, Essence Break, Blade Dance, the Hunt, Immolation Aura, Sigil of Flame, even the Glaive stuff, that all cleaves. That's our entire kit. The only things that don't cleave are the initial Hunt damage, Chaos Strike, our auto attacks, and Fel Blade. And that's why you see these things get buffed all the time. Because the spec is just not designed in a way to have a rotation that works or is different for AoE a single target. It's the same on both ways. You're dealing cleave damage the whole time you're in single target, unless you literally just push Chaos Strike. And in AoE, because all of your AoE buttons are either setup buttons or something with short cooldowns like Blade Dance, which again doesn't really do AoE. Look at it here, it does 400,000 chaos damage to primary target, which is pretty good. Chaos is great. There's 126 physical damage to enemies. Physical, so it's hit by armor, it's not buffed by anything, and it's also a quarter of the damage it does to one target. Now that's not even counting like critting or like, I'm not sure if this is effective with my mastery, I think it is. But it does 1/4 of what it does to a primary target to other targets, and then it also deals reduced damage beyond 5 to that AoE. So it does basically no AoE damage. It's like very low AoE damage. A lot of the damage from Blade Dance and Chaos Strike, stuff like that. Sorry, Blade Dance and Death Sweep is the First Blood primary target damage. Like the cleave is pretty minor and pretty like who cares? So we've kind of like painted ourselves into this corner where, oh, Havoc's bad at single target. Okay, well we can buff Chaos Strike and Fel Blade. And a further issue is that by buffing Chaos Strike a ton, most of our damage is Chaos Strike. So if we hit a point where we're still bad at single target, which we still are, by the way, we're still a really bad single target spec. They can't really buff Chaos Strike more, because if we get to the spot where Chaos Strike is going to be the only thing we push, because we're actually pretty close to that. I don't have the 2 sims right now, but Chaos Strike, only pushing it, never using Blade Dance, is like 100k behind using Blade Dance, and like that's ridiculous. So we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner where Velarsh is AoE damage, but we also use it in single target, so we can't really buff that in single target. We're bad at it. So same with Sigil Flame, but this is an enabler. This is an enabler. I-Beam does so much AoE damage as well, which, you know, I'm happy I-Beam is good again. Essence Break, AoE damage that we use in single target. Use this in single target. Throw Glaive could be buffed. Also, I don't know what's happening to my tooltip over there. But Throw Glaive is just a failed experiment. Immolation Aura we use in single target, but again, you know, cleave damage, cleave damage, cleave damage, cleave damage, cleave damage, cleave damage, cleave damage. And like most other specs have some form of differentiating between the two. All we have is the Immolation Aura stuff, and again, that's a generator. We have the Glaives, which is a failed experiment that they need to fix. I think if the Glaives were a real AoE tool, we'd actually have the ability to differentiate between doing single target damage and AoE damage in a way to buff both of them. So I think Havoc's just kind of a failure of design. Everything we do for single target also affects AoE. Everything we do for AoE, we also do in single target. So it's this really hard situation where basically the only things that have it that can be buffed, if we're just trying to buff our single target, or if we're just trying to buff our AoE, are like these weird niche abilities that don't do a ton of damage, or Chaos Strike. And buffing Chaos Strike is this whole other problem, because if they buff it so much, we hit this point where the only thing you ever want to do is push Chaos Strike. And that reduces us down to a really bad one-button rotation, and then all the whole Havoc memes come back. And we're just sitting there pushing one until the cows come home, which is not very enjoyable, in my opinion. If you like that, great, good for you. You can still play that. But it just puts us in a really weird spot. So to end this rant, I want to take a look at some other trees, because a lot of other specs don't have this problem. They have the ability to differentiate between the two. They have a knob they can tune up and down. I don't know. Havoc just kind of has this problem where everything you do in AoE, you also do in single target, and then you do in single target, you also do in AoE. So it's really hard to balance between the two, where if we're bad at one, it's kind of hard to buff the other one, because that just makes you really good at the other. So it's just this there's really bad design situation where Havoc can't really be good at anything, it can't really be bad at anything. We're just stuck perpetually in the middle. Well, they can be bad at single target, because for some reason they refuse to buff First Blood. I don't know why. They just okay, let's just buff Chaos Strike for the 40th time. Let's buff Fel Blade. Buff First Blood, for fuck's sake. We're gonna hit this problem where Chaos Strike's just better than anything else. Anyways, talent trees. All right, welcome to this whirlwind tour of other spec trees real quick. So, Balance Druid, first off, big thing for Balance Druid here is that a lot of their AoE comes from Starfall. Now, Starfall's not on the tree anymore, it's made baseline, which is a great move by Blizzard. But a lot of your AoE damage is Starfall. They even have the mushrooms somewhere in this tree. Mushrooms that deal AoE damage. They have the dots, which I guess you don't think that also is single target, but their dots also apply in AoE. And then they have the cleave from, I believe it's Starfire or something like that. They have that cleave. So they have different tools to tune for single target AoE, right? They have a single target spender in Star Surge. They have an AoE spender in Starfall. They have a single target builder and an AoE builder. And there's you incorporate them all into single target, but they're used in different ways in AoE and single target, which is great, right? Looking at another spec here. Dev Ogre, Pyre. Right away, AoE damage, insane. If they're bad at AoE, buff this. Bad single target, buff Disintegrate. Boom, done. Next. They also have Firestorm, which no one uses, but whatever. Hunters, great example of this, right? Beast Cleave. Insane way of melding single target and AoE without making it so you can only use this in one or the other, right? You'd never use this in single target, but in AoE, this is really strong, and it's 3 talents you grab, which maybe should be 1 or 2. Maybe should be baseline. I don't know why multi-shot isn't. But is what it is. So great way here of combining the two. Gives you a pretty solid way of building out a single target rotation, and then you can also do AoE as well for pretty free. Marksmanship, very similar ideas with trick shots, explosive shot, volley, although I'm not sure they might use volley in single target. So tons of ways here for dealing AoE damage. They have barrage now. I don't know if anyone uses that, but that could be a thing they do. They have a lot of options for picking, okay, we're doing single target, we're doing AoE. How do we do things different between dungeons and raids, right? Mages, I'm not going to talk about. Windwalker Monk, I want to talk about because they have stuff like all the spinning crane kicks off on the left side here. They have, I guess, the Jade Lightning things. That's kind of a meme. But I want to talk about Fist of Fury, because Fist of Fury is what Blade Dance is to Havoc, except it actually does AoE damage. Now it's a channel, right? But it does 5 times 138 to your primary, and then 5 times 138 divided by 54 of 100, which is 54% damage to others. So, whereas Havoc, you're doing 400,000 to one target and 100,000 everything else physical. This is also physical. But this is doing half as much, which is a much bigger number, right? Half, about twice that, a quarter. So this is a way better way of doing AoE damage. So I don't know why they haven't buffed the AoE of Blade Dance, but here we are. Rep Paladin, Expurgate, Blade of Justice can cleave somewhere in this tree. But the big one here, Divine Storm. Different button. You use, I don't even know what it's called off the top of my head. Final Verdict, sure. Use that in single target. You use Divine Storm and AoE. They can buff them separately. They have a bunch of things in this tree that lets their builders cleave. Their builders, they don't have to save them. They just use them all the time. So it's not like Immolation Aura, where Immolation Aura, yeah, we have AoE tied to it, but we're trying to hold that, right? Because we want to spare it for the only window where we do damage, same with Sigil Flame, right? Imagine if you were a Rep Paladin and you had to hold Blade of Justice for 30 seconds to pair it with your Wake of Ashes window, or you had to hold Judgment, pair it with your Wake of Ashes window. But Wake of Ashes was 40 seconds, right? That'd be bad. Holding things, not very fun. Last few here, Shadow Priest obviously has Psychic Link, which is the most broken thing in the game. But it's a way of taking that single target gameplay. You're doing this one thing in single target and spreading it out and doing different things in AoE. You have Shadowcrafts, which you take in single target, I believe. I'm not really sure off the top of my head, but you have ways of spreading it around. It's more about dot management in AoE. You can have things like Mindbender, which I think can cleave with Shadow Word Death. I don't remember what else is on this tree that does AoE. I think the apparitions do one, but there's like a dot management playstyle where you're spreading your dots around for Psychic Link, and it's a way of making things scale into AoE without being broken in single target. Although it is pretty broken in AoE when it's good. Finally, Rogues. Very similar stuff. Caustic Splatter. Cleaving poison damage. Great tuning knob between AoE and single target. You can change things around pretty easily that way. Outlaw has Blade Flurry. Wherever it is in here. Dancing Steel. Just causes your single target to cleave. Again, really, really powerful. And Sub has Shuriken Storm, Black Powder. I think they have like that one finishing move somewhere in this tree that causes clones. I don't know what it's called off the top of my head or where it is, but they have, oh, here you go, Secret Technique, or things that hit in AoE. So a lot of specs, I'm not gonna go through the other ones, a lot of specs have that barrier, that differentiator between single target and AoE, that allows them to be better tuned, where, oh, this is bad, let's buff this. Havoc doesn't. All of Havoc's abilities are used in both single target and AoE. The only thing that isn't is Glaive Tempest and Fel Barrage, which we don't even really use in AoE, or the Glaze stuff, which again, we don't really use in AoE, right? I-Beam, great way of AoE damage, we use that single target. Essence Break, same thing. Blade Dance, same thing. Not even very good at AoE, as I've shown. So all we really have is Chaos Strike, Fel Blade, and Demon's Blades that can buffer single target that also we use in AoE. So I don't know, it's a mess. Immolation Aura is our only real differentiator, but again, we use it in single targets. They can't buff the base spell, and it's a generator that we have to save and use for inertia. So Havoc just doesn't make sense. Our single target, our AoE is a mess. There's no differentiator between the two. It causes you to be really the same between both game modes. It causes you to live in this world where you can't really buff or change each one. There's not really great tuning knobs. And that's why Fel Blade gets buffed 60,000 times, because the devs have just left themselves with nothing else to buff besides Chaos Strike. And if you buff Chaos Strike to the moon, it ruins Havoc's rotation. So we're on this really horrible thin line where things can't change. And I don't know, I'm just frustrated. And it's turned like Fridays are my rant of the game design of Havoc days. But there you go. I don't know, that's my thoughts on this video form. I didn't write a script. I never write a script, but I just got this idea and I'm like, yeah, let's rip this out and just talk about it. So there you go. I don't know, it's a mess. Hopefully we get some stuff in 11.1. I think the PTR should be in like January, so like about a month from now. It's just rough, man. You hope we're better, and there it is. So that's the video. I'll go to my camera here. Let me know what your things are, what your thoughts are on this whole topic. It's a weird slippery slope. It's a weird topic, but I mean, like, this is the reason why Fel Blade gets buffed so much, But there you go. Maybe they should make Fel Blade cleave. That'd be pretty fun. I don't know. Like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time. Peace. A big thank you to all of my channel members. Thank you to Zooligan, rpalms46, Fear Redefined, Justin Penny, Callum Price, Gabrielle Correa, Magicman 133, Falafador and Dark Terror, Sky Elk, and Brad Wisniak. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel a little bit, consider becoming a channel member down below. And just thanks for watching the videos, everybody. Even if you don't become a channel member, you're still supporting me. So thanks, everybody. See you guys next time. Peace.